You might expect to find a portrait of Harold Washington, the first African American to serve as mayor of Chicago, at the DuSable Black History Museum on the city's south side, Roosevelt University, the mayor's alma mater, or Chicago City Hall. You might not expect to find one displayed in the kitchen of local historian Brendan Jennings in the rural community of Lakeview, 300 miles south of Lake Michigan's shore. But you would. Here's why.
So this is the original foundation to the Allen family homestead, where we believe that Roy Washington, Harold Washington's older brother, would have been born. It is not a standing location anymore, but we still have the foundation on the property.
Although Harold Washington's birthplace was Chicago, his parents moved there only 2 years beforehand from the Lakeview Carrier Mills area in southern Illinois' Saline County, where his mother, Bertha Jones Washington, was raised.
So Lakeview was founded between 1820 and 1830, and it was a group of families.
They came from, my understanding is, they migrated from what would be the western side of North Carolina, but previously lived in the very southern part of Virginia. Family lore states that they owned property, and because of the color of their skin, that wasn't popular, so the laws were changed, and they moved from Virginia into North Carolina. Once again, family lore. And once in North Carolina, again, the laws were changed, and then they moved into what I would call Middle Tennessee. And then over time, traveled not necessarily to Lakeview, but maybe other free communities, and then a group of them eventually ended up here. And we're fortunate in that there are a lot of representations from those families still here locally, or we are connected to them. So this isn't a community that existed and then everybody just went away. This is a very
active community.
Active, strong, proud community.
Correct.
Of descendants who want to carry on what our forefathers laid out.
Harold Washington's father's family also had deep roots in rural black communities in southern Illinois, as we know from a remarkable book, The Ancestry of Mayor Harold Washington by Curtis Brassfield, a specialist in African American genealogy. Harold's great-grandfather, Isom or Isham Washington, was enslaved near Lovelessville in western Kentucky and served in the Union Army during the Civil War. Around 1900, he and his family moved across the Ohio River to the Brookport area in Massac County, Illinois, where he farmed and preached at the local African Methodist Episcopal, or AME, church. Isom's son, Mac, followed his father into the ministry, pastoring several AME congregations in southern and central Illinois. Those included 2 in Lawrence County, home to a long-established black population.
The Free African American Story is what I'm going to call it. It's part of our heritage here in Lawrence County. It began over 200 years ago. They came from the South, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. So pretty well all down south is where they come from for one reason or another. Some came up with white farmers and worked as servants, and some came up, I'm sure, on the Underground Railroad, which was, we feel, is right near the Wabash River. They came in here in the very early 1800s, 1815, and they settled in, they owned land, they owned their own property, they became farmers, and they worked the land, they had their own churches, their own schools, between Pinkstaff and Russellville, 2 small towns. At one time it was even considered, it was called Little Africa. The old Bethel AME Church was considered the mother church. It was here. It began in the 1880s, and these folks that were settled in around this area here in Bond Township decided that it was time to create a church. I believe they were having church in a home, and that's when it began. And actually, it was started out in an old log church, and we have a photo of that old log church with some of the early members of that church. There must be 100 people in there. In 1916, there was a minister by the name of Mac Washington. In 1916, he actually founded and started the St. James AME Church in Lawrenceville on 11th and Ash Street. So the country folks were attached to the Old Bethel Church, and the townsfolk were attached to St. James, but they did combine services, and it worked out quite well. And as a youngster, I remember going to the Old Bethel Church as well as the St. James Church.
Another youngster who undoubtedly attended both Bethel and St. James churches was Reverend Mac Washington's son, Roy. Roy Washington graduated from Lawrenceville Township High School, one of the few racially integrated high schools in southern Illinois at the time, around 1917 or 1918. In 1916, he had married Bertha Jones of the Lakeview Carrier Mills area, where the couple lived and had 2 children before moving in 1920 to Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood. There, Bertha pursued a musical career, while Roy became an attorney, a Democratic precinct captain, and a part-time AME minister. Their son, Harold, the future mayor, was born in 1922. Several members of their immediate family remained in southern and central Illinois. According to local memory, young Harold Washington occasionally visited Saline County. Harold Washington's connections to small communities in downstate Illinois differentiated him from many other Chicago-based public figures of his era, including many of his fellow African-American elected officials whose families had come from the Deep South during a subsequent phase of the Great Northern Migration. That raises an intriguing question. How did Harold Washington's family roots in rural Illinois influence his perspective on urban-rural and interregional relations within our state? The answer to that question has proven more elusive than we at Illinois Humanities anticipated when we began investigating it. According to associates of Mayor Washington who've generously shared their recollections with us, he rarely mentioned his family ties to downstate communities and never told them how that aspect of his background influenced his work as a public official. Furthermore, although much has been written about Mr. Washington's family history and about his career in government, little has been written about any connections between the two. Maybe the answer to our question is to be found in an interview that we haven't yet heard or an archival document that we haven't yet studied. We do know that his family tradition of Methodist preaching inspired his love of language and penchant for public speaking. We also know that during the historic 1977 leadership election in the Illinois State Senate, the Black Caucus, led by then-Senator Washington, cooperated extensively with the predominantly downstate Democratic Study Group led by Terry Bruce of Olney in pursuit of reform. When Harold Washington ran for mayor of Chicago in 1983, the editorial page of the Carbondale-based Southern Illinoisan proclaimed him the candidate most likely to foster a harmonious relationship between the city and downstate. In 1986, he became the first Chicago mayor in living memory to make official visits to central and southern Illinois cities such as Peoria, Champaign, and East St. Louis, meeting with local leaders about potential opportunities for collaboration. Mayor Washington commented, "The time has come for the mayor of the city of Chicago to relate closely and honestly and genuinely with other mayors, village presidents, and county board presidents." It seems reasonable to speculate, then, that perhaps Harold Washington's family roots were among his motivations for seeking mutually beneficial cooperation between Chicago and other regions of Illinois. It's also at least tempting to speculate that even during contentious episodes in the rough-and-tumble politics of 1980s Chicago, Mayor Washington kept in the back of his mind the virtues that Denise Drew and Brendan Jennings associate with Lakeview.
As far as what the people of Lakeview represent to me, they represent grit, determination, fortitude, hard, earnest work, belief in God, belief in community, and belief in education. It has been said that there's many people from this community who entered high school and were done at 16 and went on to university. We have doctors, lawyers, you name it. We had people who came from Lakeview who were at a time when maybe all the odds were against them culturally, maybe being a woman or whatever, who strived. They never let those things hold them back. They kept pushing forward.
Lakeview to me symbolizes, and the community here symbolizes resilience, it symbolizes strength, it symbolizes humility, and the American dream even in the face of adversity.